Hello, all you textual deviants, and welcome to another episode of Texting. I'm Mark Will in Taipei.
And I'm Tomek in St. Petersburg.
Welcome back to the studio.
Thank you very much. I apologize to all our dedicated listeners for missing a week. Had a nasty cold, otherwise known as a strain of COVID. Allegedly,
Well,
possibly.
you don't know that because you didn't test. If you don't test, you don't have it. If you do test, you probably do have it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, no one can afford the time off and the pay cut that entails, so we just labor on. Come rain, come shine.
Good to have you back.
Cheers, man. Looking
Is that
forward
enough
to
banter?
I think we've done enough. We've done enough banter. I will just make a quick mental health note that if any of you, like me, are suffering with your mental health because of less than ideal physical conditions, don't trust what your brain is saying when you're not at 100%. Just wait, shut your brain down, and see how you're feeling when you're back to normal.
Sound advice.
Yeah.
We have to go through these dark nights of the soul from time to time. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. That's what I say.
Yeah, it's easy to say that when you're out of the dark time of the soul. But in the dark time of the soul, that's the scary period. Where no rationale, no logic really does the trick.
Not too fun.
I was actually thinking just the last thing, I was thinking about the stanzas of dejection written in Naples that you and I discussed. So Shelley was speaking to me when I was having
Shelley. Okay.
Yeah, he was speaking to me in that moment, relating to his artistic sense of despair.
I think Coleridge has a poem called Dejection as well.
Okay.
It was a favorite theme of those British romantics.
Indeed. So what are we talking about today, Mark?
Well, today I thought we would take the Roger Waters challenge. Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, in his interviews, often mentions the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. He, in fact, calls it his platform. And he says either you subscribe to the 30 articles of this document or you don't. And so I had not, before, deciding to discuss the document for this episode, read it in its entirety. So I thought maybe it was time for me to do that and to check myself. Do I agree with all of these articles, and why or why not? So that is why I chose this topic, and I think we should just jump right into it because there are 30 articles.
Sure, so I'll give a tiny little
take us a while.
Reference just to my background with this document. I haven't studied it in great detail, but I was aware of it for years. Almost 20 years ago, I taught it. I was working at a UNESCO language camp in Poland, and one of my colleagues was really into human rights and activism, and she introduced me to it. And so I remember having a brief discussion with students about it at that point. And then I also remember a colleague when I was in Teach for America who I think wrote her dissertation kind of challenging this document and suggesting that it had an Occidental bias. And so I think that's one of the common allegations, which we can maybe discuss later. But those were the main two reference points for me.
Yes, Occidental bias, or I guess we could say like first world, Western world bias, a lot of different ways of looking at it. It's in some ways, it's called a universal declaration, but some have argued that actually it's not universal. There are issues of cultural relativism that the document fails to take into account. Although, having read a bit about the history of the document, it was created under the auspices of the UN. The final document, I think, was completed in 1948 in Paris. Eleanor Roosevelt was, to some degree, the impetus for, establishing the committee that wrote it and ratified it and so on. But apparently there was a person, a scholar named P.C. Chang, who was of Chinese origin, and he had some arguments with some of
Americans will be more familiar with his brother, P.F. Chang. Do you know him?
No.
Sorry, that's a really bad joke, because there's a
the restaurant. I got it.
Okay, go on.
Well, who knows? Maybe there is some relation. Yeah, well, he was of Chinese origin, and so he argued for Confucian principles to be included as having universal significance. So, in response to those who say that the document is culturally relative, he would maybe argue that, in fact, by incorporating these Chinese or Confucian principles into the document, it gave it a certain universality.
There's also this this Lebanese guy, Charles Malik,
right,
who had a prominent role. So yeah, the writers of the initial document were from a diverse group of countries. Yeah, so that would be the primary.
If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Malik was sort of arguing for a Christian bias. He was basically suggesting that Christian principles have universal applicability, and it was Dr. Chang who sort of checked him, and hopefully made the document more universal. But despite that, as we've said, there have still been some criticisms. Amnesty International, for example, suggested that the document should also include the right to refuse to kill, which would be an interesting addition. And then the American Anthropological Association points out that, some of these articles, these 30 articles, fail to consider non-Western cultures, let's say, or non-first world cultures. And to address some of those issues, in 1993, there was drafted a Bangkok Declaration, which attempted to incorporate what the members of that committee called Asian values. So, I mean, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights itself is probably in the tradition of the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, and maybe also the U.S. Declaration of Independence. And you just took a hit on something. Is that for asthma, or are you vaping?
I want to reduce the cough outtake, so I think that will help. Yeah, go on.
All right.
The viewers of the video will find that more amusing than the listeners.
That wasn't opium, was it? Speaking of Asian values,
it's just some good Ventolin.
Anyway, what is it called? corticosteroid maybe to help with those respiratory issues.
Yeah, actually, it's just funny because in Russia it's a lot harder to get name brand drugs now. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I maybe told you that. Like now, it's hard. I
Yeah,
can't get Zoloft anymore. I have to get like an Indian imitation,
right.
which Zoloft is Pfizer, and the inhaler that I used last year was made by AstraZeneca. So I
Mm.
was worried I wouldn't be able to get it, but Liliana made some calls and apparently it's still here. But in general, drug prices are much higher here and it's really hard to get Western brand drugs. So we go to the Indian manufacturers now who do all the imitation stuff. What's the?
That's
You don't
that's
call it imitation. What's the other word? Is it called
generic.
generic? Generic,
Generic.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's that's one of the benefits of BRICS, baby.
Exactly.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa,
I work with a lot
creating
of
the
South Africans. Yeah,
multipolar world.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the South Africans I work with are all about it, and they don't have any hassles when they come into Russia. I think I told you that before, but
Hmm.
yeah,
Unlike you.
exactly. Okay.
All right. Well, let's get into this. I mean, that's probably enough of an introduction. Let's just see, do we subscribe to these 30 articles or not?
Good. And
That
I want
is
to
the
say my
Roger
last
Waters
thing,
challenge.
and I want
Mm-hmm.
to say one more thing, which is just I'm not. I'm happy to be convinced otherwise, and maybe you'll put forth that argument, but the Western bias argument is not particularly compelling for me. Like, I kind of think that's a secondary issue when we're talking about this document. Like, I think the power of the document or the relevance of the document or the dissonance between the document's existence and reality are maybe more worthwhile discussion topics, because as far as the Western bias, I don't know. I mean, I think these are all pretty safe. I mean, maybe we're going to challenge that in a second, but yeah,
Well,
I think these are.
as you're saying this, I'm wondering, like, is the concept of universality itself a kind of Western notion? I don't know the answer, but is
Well, I'll
that
just say then at the outset, I'm ready to, if that's the case, I'm ready to champion the Western position until proven otherwise.
okay? Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Let's get into it and let's see what we think.
Okay. And we're going to look at the original or we're going to look at the Amnesty simplified version?
Well, I've got both, but let's go with the original.
Okay.
And if
Just
you've
so I
got
can follow along.
if you've got the Amnesty version
I've got
handy
both
there,
open.
you can. Okay, well,
Yeah.
you can. Maybe I'll look at the original, and then you can look at the Amnesty version. We'll see how
Okay.
it goes. But
Great.
the document begins with a preamble, and I won't read the whole thing, but there's some key phrases that I found interesting and I highlighted. One is all members of the human family. That's a nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Hard to argue with that, right? Freedom of speech and belief, and freedom from fear and want. That sounds like the Roosevelt platform, the FDR platform. Maybe Ms. Eleanor is partly responsible for the language there. But
You mean the platform he ran on or what?
well, I think there were like the four freedoms of, I don't know which term. He was elected 4 times, so he reigned, as it were, for quite a while. But at one point there was mention of the four freedoms, and I think it was these four: speech and belief, uh, freedom of speech, freedom of belief, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. I think these so-called freedoms were tied to the New Deal program in some way. But
and we don't mean freedom from want in the Buddhist Enlightenment sense.
No, it's like,
Overcoming desire.
no, it's more material than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But it's the document describes this as the highest aspiration of the common people. So here might be one example of the cultural relativism, right? Like freedom of speech and belief is not as highly valued in certain cultures as, you know, it's at least claimed to be in Western nations, although how much freedom of speech does Julian Assange have?
I was wondering how long we'd get into the podcast before his name came up.
Of course. Of course.
I want to look at that sentence a little bit more. So, in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want. But I think all four are on the same level. If I read this again, like the four together are being proclaimed as the highest aspiration.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So those four are not being ranked.
No, not ranked.
Okay.
No, they're just they're like a four-part set of values.
Okay.
It's like a four-part platform, I guess.
Just because I read that one key aspect of this document is that there's meant to be no hierarchy, no prioritization, that all the rights, all the 30 rights are interdependent and indivisible.
So yeah, I think we can read it that way.
Okay, sorry, go on.
It's not saying, for example, that freedom of speech is more important than freedom from want or whatever.
Yeah, sorry, I got confused.
Okay, and then some other key phrases in this preamble. It says, whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. That's an interesting clause because it's saying, yes, as a last resort, one does have the right to rebellion against tyranny and oppression. And if one's rights are not protected by the rule of the law, then you're sort of making rebellion inevitable. I mean,
very
Kennedy said something
as well, right?
What's that?
It's like the social contract, right?
Well, yeah, but I'm thinking of like the Kennedy expression, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable, or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then there's the phrase friendly relations between nations, as the United Nations. That is one of the goals, to allegedly, theoretically, to facilitate friendly relations between nations. There's mention of the equal rights of men and women. That's only two types of people, men and women. Canceled.
Unbelievable.
Canceled. All right.
Yeah.
So you have all these whereas clauses, and then, now therefore the General Assembly proclaims this universal declaration of human rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. So, pretty universal, has universal applicability. Everyone in the world, and throughout we'll see language of this sort. Everyone, all human beings, beginning with Article 1. Let's just jump into it. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. No mention of sisterhood or them theirhood. Canceled.
So obviously, I mean, I'm laughing, but like, are you taking a stance, or are you just gonna kind of put that like whimsical comic aspect in when you're saying that?
Well,
I
of course,
mean,
I'm being facetious. I mean, this was written in 1948. There was no.
right, I get it, but I'm saying so. Ignoring the kind of furor that is associated with gender today, but what would be your stance on the wording of something like brotherhood, if we can kind of take the emotion out of it?
Well, you could say, as I was reading it, I was thinking maybe the phrase or the word solidarity, spirit of solidarity,
So you're
might
not
be.
opposed to revising some of the gendering of language here?
I mean, we're not considering revisions. Well, we could, but I wasn't. I'm just, reading the actual text that we have and commenting on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm
But
just saying
okay, sure,
you're
yeah,
laughing
like
about,
you,
I'm just
you.
asking.
Well, you mean you want to say the spirit of brotherhood, sisterhood, and what personhood or
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like you're saying, laugh
humanity?
canceled. I'm saying, what is it? Something that merits word, a new wording? And I
Well,
would
I'm not.
say
I'm not.
probably yes.
I'm not. Okay. Well, I have no opposition to that, but at the same time, I'm not excessively triggered by it.
Yeah, and so I was just
I'm not
clarifying.
outraged. Yeah.
Sure,
I mean,
easy
as
for
I
you to
say, as
say
I
as a
was.
man. Sorry,
Yeah, exactly. And a
but there's some
cisgender
truth to that,
male
though.
at that. Well, as I was reading, I just thought maybe, spirit of solidarity would be more felicitous there. But
Yeah, or
let's just think
personhood.
about yes, but let's just think about the premise, the idea here.
Sure.
All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. I mean, they're echoes of the U.S. Declaration of Independence
Yeah,
here.
absolutely.
Notice that it says endowed with reason and conscience, no mention of a creator, right? So
Mm,
that's maybe an update to the theistic document of the 18th century.
right. I think that's an interesting point.
But like free and equal in dignity and rights. Can't argue with that. Everyone should be equal under the law.
Two households, alike in dignity, in fair Verona. Sorry.
Carry
Right?
on.
No, I don't know how much further I can go, but it is interesting, right? In a way that even there the superiority of dignity is insisted upon.
Hmm.
Anyway.
Okay, well, why don't you read Article 2? Let's just go back and forth. Ping
Okay.
pong. Let's ping
All right.
pong this bitch.
All right. Are we going to read all of this, though? Maybe I'll read the simplified version. Okay, simplified
Go
version
ahead.
of 2. These rights belong to everybody, whether we are rich or poor, whatever country we live in, whatever sex or whatever color we are, whatever language we speak, whatever we think, or whatever we believe. So, all inclusive.
That's quite a bit shorter than the version I'm looking at, but okay.
Well, you can tell me if you
Yay or
think it misses
nay?
something. Yay, of course.
Well, there's mention in the original. It says, furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty. So I'm, thinking of
Palestine.
the Palestinians. Yeah, exactly. And what has the UN done to help them?
Well, and especially since you said that
That's a
Roger
rhetorical
Waters.
question, but we know the answer.
Yeah, and especially since you said that the Roger Waters aspect is kind of what led you to consider this topic today, and we know that the reason that he is reviled and adored, or one of the main reasons, is for his
The wall.
steadfast, for the wall, the wall that separates the territories from mainland Israel.
Well, I think his point is, okay, this is what you claim your values are. Do you live according to those values? I don't think so. And,
Yeah.
that's a fair point. All right, Article 3. We don't want to dally. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the security of person. Sure. Although I also think about, the George Carlin stand-up special we read. You don't have any rights. You have no rights. Okay? You have a set of temporary privileges that can be taken away from you at any time. At any time, again, the powers that be choose.
Right. So,
and he gives the example of the Japanese American citizens that were, rounded up during World War II. As he says, the time they most needed their rights, they were taken away.
Right. And so I think the issue of disparity or dissonance between the document and reality, of course, is going to be perpetual. And I think that critics of this document, the most obvious criticism perhaps, is just that these can't be guaranteed. They can't be implemented. They can't be enforced. And
who enforces them? That's the issue with all types of law. Who
and these are not laws. That's the point.
Them?
That's what I wanted to say. These are not laws.
But even if it did have the strength of law, right? Who is interpreting the law and who is enforcing the law? That's always a question in these matters.
Right.
So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like fantasy. It's just an aspirational kind of document.
Right.
With no teeth. But I think it's, like with any kind of law, it's used by the weak for defensive purposes. It's like the powerful must have some sort of law to justify or try to legitimize their rule. So the weak say, okay, well, you said this. Are you living up to what you claim your values are? No, you're not. Here it is. You're the one who created this document and promulgated these articles and declared their universality, but you don't follow them. I mean, in that sense, it's kind of like a defensive weapon for the oppressed.
Yeah,
in that sense, I very much, value this.
Right. And I guess just the question is, how much power do activists wield in general, right? Like, this is a document that they'll refer to and that they'll try to use to bolster their arguments and to shift and sway public opinion. But ultimately, how much power do people have? How much power do activists have? And I'm not saying that they don't have power. I'm just saying to quantify that is difficult. And I guess it varies depending on the location and the period in history.
Well, it's like the International Criminal Court in The Hague, right? Like it can declare all these people war criminals. Okay, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
The U.S. actually passed a law saying that the U.S. military has the right to invade the Netherlands if any U.S. military personnel are, taken and put on trial by the court.
Yeah, I mean, so many occasions of cognitive dissonance. You've got I'm just thinking today, talking to a colleague, you got the 2013 Gallup poll, which came back with a resounding unanimity that America poses the greatest threat to world peace.
Yes.
63%, and the second was like 8% with
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan. At the same time, you've got Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And this was during the same period of time. I think Obama was in power at that time, right?
Well, and he had already become the drone king at that point,
Another
right?
example of cognitive dissonance today. We've got the International Court of, what is it called? What's the official title?
International Criminal Court, I think.
Okay, International Criminal Court demanding Putin's arrest or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you've got Russia leading the Security Council. So it's like, just things cannot get more ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just, yeah.
It's a strange carnival.
Right.
Or maybe shit show is a better descriptor. All right, read Article 4 for us.
Okay. Nobody has any right to make us a slave. We cannot make anyone else our slave without their willing consent.
Interesting. The language differences.
I added that last part. Sorry.
Okay. Well, mine says no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. And then, of course, what do I think of? Libya, baby. Libya. After the U.S. toppled Gaddafi, under Obama and his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, we saw the reintroduction of slave markets.
Can you expand on that? Like in Libya?
Yes.
But just because the country was in disarray or what?
Yes, because, the order was subverted. There was a coup. They bayoneted Gaddafi in the ass. And those, ISIS-affiliated extremists, maybe there were several groups fighting one another, right? But chaos was the result, and one of the consequences was slave markets in Libya, allegedly.
They had some story came out recently, some kind of leak about Hillary and her flippant attitude towards Libya. I mean, she did have this famous quote where she said, "We came, we saw, he died."
Yeah, of course.
But she also just said something else came out recently. Just something I can't remember what the quote was or the story exactly.
She's proud of it. She's proud of it. She's doing an online master course. What's that?
I know,
master class.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's called like being in the room or whatever. She teaches people how to make tough decisions when you're in the room.
I guess I just think that like joking about it is when it is like, being proud if you believe in something. Yeah, it's unpleasant if it's something to do with military and conflict, but when you get to the point where you're just making jokes about it, that's when it's really vulgar and despicable to me. That's like the ultimate. It's like the Barbaran thing that McCain did, right? But bomb, Iran. That's like that kind of level.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway. Absolutely. All right, Article 5. No one shall be subjected.
Well, it's pretty funny. Sorry.
Absurdly so, yeah. Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Julian Assange. Article 6.
All right, I think I'm going to stick with your version then too, because I don't know. Unless it looks particularly wordy or obtuse. Mm-hmm. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law.
This reminds me of the final cut, the last Pink Floyd album before Roger Waters left. I mean, it's basically a Roger Waters solo album, but he talks about recourse to the law, like that was the promise of the post-war dream, post-World War II dream. Everyone would have recourse to the law, and then, you know, that post-war dream was shattered by Thatcher, like completely shattered. That's the storyline of the final cut, or one of them. So yeah, I mean, everyone should be equal before the law.
But are we just going to read all 30 and say how they're all not, how they're how they all seem absurd if we talk about reality? Is that all we're going to do?
I don't know. Or... What do you want to do? I don't have a plan for this.
Okay, I'm just asking, like, maybe because I think I don't want it to feel redundant in that sense, because I think that's where it will go ultimately. I mean, these are fairly benign. They cover a range of topics. But maybe we shouldn't go through each one unless there's something that's particularly contentious. Because I think they're all fairly safe, fairly vanilla.
Seven is apparently related to 6, because it says all are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. No comment. Read 8.
Okay, well, no, I want to suggest that unless you have specific articles that you find tantalizing, that we just discuss the more universal relevance of this document, like, and just come back to issues of its position in the world. Like, is it something cosmetic? Is it, we've already kind of touched upon it a little bit, but I'm more interested in just the issues around the document than I am about the individual document, because yeah, they just seem like all good things.
I'm taking the Roger Waters challenge. I want to know, like, what the 30 articles actually are, and do I agree with them or disagree? Do I subscribe to them or not?
Okay, but are there any, you've read it in preparation for the show, so are there any that you disagreed with when you browsed through them earlier?
I won't say that I disagreed with them, but I, had questions or concerns. Not just that they don't match reality, but I wondered, like, is this even phrased the way it should be?
Okay, I'm happy to continue this way, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, so to do that, I'd want to go article by article, which
okay, no worries.
might be tedious, but we can do it quickly.
Okay. But we should also read it beautifully for our listeners.
I think we're doing a damn good job.
All right, so you got 8. I've got 8. All right. I'm going to go to the amnesty version. We can ask for the law to help us when we are not treated fairly.
So another article relating to the person's relation to the legal system, 6, 7, and 8. All very similar. Number 9, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Now that doesn't, this interested me because it doesn't account for voluntary exiles like you or me. This is forced exile, obviously.
Yeah.
Any comment?
I don't know. I'm trying to see, like, what could be contentious about it.
Well, I mean, Nothing.
Yeah. So then,
It's saying that, arbitrary arrest, uh, arbitrary imprisonment, and like extraordinary rendition, all of those things should be prohibited. Of
hmm,
course, I agree with that.
right.
And what is the? I mean, this goes back to Magna Carta, right? The arbitrary detention or arrest. Um, this is oh, what's the concept? Um, you know what I'm talking about with regard to
I'm not
arrest
sure.
corpus. Um, I'll remember it in a minute.
Habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus, yes. You must have the body is the literal Latin meaning of that phrase. So you can't just disappear people. You must
Mm.
you must be able to display people that you've imprisoned, and you must be able to justify it in some way. So this is, at least in the English speaking world, this goes back to what, the 10th or 11th century, when those noblemen stood up to King John.
Have you been
Habeas corpus,
following the
indeed.
story of Evan Gershkovich's imprisonment or detaining?
No,
He's
no.
this
Who's
Wall
that?
Street Journal's. He's this Wall Street Journal reporter, um, American journalist based in Russia, who recently was detained and accused of espionage.
Oh, I
So
did hear something about that. What's his status now?
he had an unsuccessful attempt at like a temporary bailout, basically. So he's just he's seen his lawyer. Russia has expressed their disapproval of the American ambassador's critical comments of his arrest and basically saying like stay out of our business. And
Hmm.
I don't know why I'm bringing that up. I mean, just obviously it's because you just wonder about the legal system in countries that are clearly undemocratic and where human rights are not especially respected, but then everything's on a spectrum, right? Like there's still some, whether it's show or not, there's still some attempt at due process. There will still be a trial. So I guess I'm saying, like, we'll say that a country like Russia has fallen off the deep end in terms of like concepts of justice, and that we're now living in this new era of Stalinist repressions, and every person in opposition is just being jailed unfairly. But it's like we discuss things in these like extremes. And it's not that I'm sympathetic to the Russian position, but it's just saying that there still are processes that are taking place. Or the same thing with Julian Assange, right? Like we can be outraged, but it's still not like they just took him into a room and beat the shit out of him and killed him, right? I mean,
Not
he's still
yet.
alive. I know, but he's still alive. He's still going through some kind of process. So we are still, it could be worse. It could be better. And I don't know. I think that's interesting in a way, because I think that it's thanks to this or thanks to something that it's not an absolute extreme, right? That there's some kind of attempt at something. So I don't know. I don't
Some
know.
kind
You get
of
what I'm trying to say,
Well,
right?
that it's good that there's some kind of framework that can be referred to, even if nobody follows it. It
And that it could be worse.
Yeah, although it's
I don't
pretty
know.
bad. It's pretty bad. and I mean that everywhere.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's the thing. You don't want to start going too far in the direction I'm going, because it's like saying, well, we want to be strong and assured in our criticism, but at the same time, like, there is some kind of legal process taking place. I don't know. Maybe we're just keeping judges in jobs,
Well,
because
that I mean, yeah. Once the legal mechanism is in place, it sort of just like grinds on of its own accord. There's something. There's definitely something to that.
yeah.
I mean, it's just a machine, and the machine just perpetuates itself without any consideration of the ideals it was supposedly founded to protect or promote.
Do you ever have fantasies of like not positive fantasies, but do you ever have nightmares, or we'll call it fantasies, of being arrested? And I'm sure you do, because I know you've been in some slightly jarring or sensitive situations in your time in Taiwan. So do you ever imagine that show trial that might take place?
Absolutely. My life is a Kafkaesque nightmare.
But
So,
again, it's not. It's not. I mean, okay, but it hasn't gone to the extent where you're in solitary confinement.
no.
You know what I'm saying? So, but how do
Not
you
in not in
imagine that playing
reality.
out?
Not in reality. In dreams,
How do you imagine that
all
playing out?
kinds
That
of
court case.
scenarios happen. Oh, I mean,
Would
probably
you
the
be ready
storyline
to?
probably the storyline is borrowed from Kafka's The Trial. But if you really want to know, read my book White Monkey. It's a
Okay,
very
nice.
short read.
Okay.
It'll take you 20 minutes.
So I'm saying, if you were involved in this kind of court trial, do you think you'd be like dropping the mic with some crazy appeals to these types of documents,
Oh, I've
and
done that. I've done that. I'm assisting someone with a lawsuit now, and we're considering citing um, this very document,
okay,
which is not unheard of. The lawyer, one of the lawyers that we were working with previously, cited like American labor law to the Taiwanese court. So sometimes the appeal, it can be dismissed, of course, but sometimes the appeal to these universal principles or international principles can possibly shame arbiters or judges into, you know, giving consideration to the rights of those whose rights are not usually
white monkeys.
protected. White monkeys, foreigners. Not only white monkeys, but black monkeys, brown monkeys, and yellow monkeys. Um, and yeah, I mean, one time I was at a mediation, and the mediator spoke English clearly, but refused to. And so I said, I'm not going to have this conversation in Chinese. You understand English, and you're the mediator. She said, yes, but the question is whether or not you have the right to use English. I said, you're the mediator. Do you want to mediate between me and the other party? If so, it has to be done in English, because that is the language that we have in common. So I made that appeal, but uh, she refused to consider it. So there's always that possibility. Anyway, let's move on. Read
Well,
Article
let me
10
just
for us.
my last like bit of stream of consciousness. I just think about these moments in the courtroom, when we're dealing with issues of gross injustice, and like Nadia from Pussy Riot. I don't remember exactly what she said in court, but I know that she cited bunch of poets in her defense, and it was like a really amazing speech. I read it at one point. Uh, Very compelling, so powerful. It's like, it feels like you're really experiencing a moment of history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then on the other hand, you have a Belarusian activist. I don't know if you remember this guy, but I think he was on an airplane, and they actually forced the plane to land because they knew he was on there, and he was a critic of whatever his name is, Belashenko, or what's his name? The Belarusian guy.
Mm-hmm. I
Do you know
don't,
his
but
name?
okay. No.
Okay, Belarus leader. I think this is kind of critical to this, so I'm going to check. Lukashenko. Uh, and anyway, so he's imprisoned, and then he shows up in front of the media like a week later, totally like humiliating himself, and like saying that he was wrong, and just deciding to go that route in order to get a softer punishment. And
He had a
you just wonder in
come to
those
Jesus
cases.
moment.
Yeah, you just wonder. I mean, you just wonder in those cases, like what you would do and what it's worth. What's worth doing. Because we've had another critic of the Kremlin recently just get sentenced to 25 years, but he's been very outspoken and never really softened his stance. And continues to have these like really powerful quotes when he speaks. Or Navalny the same way. This episode's not gonna help me anyway in any way in my status in Russia. But yeah, I just think about these courtroom moments a lot, and what I would do in terms of towing the line to soften a sentence or be released or try to say something eloquent and prophetic. Do you have any opinion on that?
What I would do? That's what you're asking?
Yeah, or what you would do, or how you view people in these instances,
Well,
situations.
you never know what you would do in any given situation until you do it. But I mean, I have testified. I have, you know, stood up. I have written statements.
But these are not with the risk of imprisonment, really, right? So I'm saying if it's the difference
Well,
between.
that you never know, because here there are defamation laws, and so you may think you're stating facts, but a wealthy, powerful adversary could sue you, and then you know you have your argument, but will anyone listen? Will anyone give a shit? So there's always risk.
Okay, but if I'm giving you a very black and white scenario where it's looking like 15 years in the gulag versus 2 years with a obsequious apology, is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Which do you think you would take? I get that it'll be different in the moment. You can't predict, but which do you think you would take?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm going to
And
turn
which
it
one is
around.
more noble ultimately, right?
I'm
Because
going to
like,
turn it around and ask you.
yeah, I agree. It's tricky. It depends on, like, if you feel like you'd be selling out the larger movement for justice in the world by bowing down to the tyrant, then it's more, you'd feel shittier about kissing ass. Whereas if it's just about my pride, I don't really care. I'm ready to say whatever, right? Like,
Yeah,
so I guess that's the.
it's like those Japanese Christians that were asked to trample the crucifix. Have you heard about these people?
No.
So, like the shogun or whatever. I think it was mostly in the Nagasaki area. This is, the Scorsese movie based on the novel Silence. The
No.
movie might be called Silence, but it deals with that. So some of them refused to do it and were tortured. Some of them said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it," but then they prayed for forgiveness afterwards and said their hearts weren't in it. Like, what can you say? You can't really judge anyone for their decision in that situation. And
Yeah,
I
I'm
can't.
ready to say Allah is God. If I got a gun in my head, I'm ready to say like Allah is the only God.
Oh well,
No
that's a
offense, Muslims.
that's a that's maybe easier than like some political, like
Agreed.
a
Right.
religious controversy. Sure, who gives a shit? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a I'm a I'm a Taoist. Okay, if that makes the in-laws happy. Uh, Although when it comes to uh like claiming to be a Presbyterian or whatever, I might be a little more firm in my
I
refusal
was
because
thinking Taoist feels like the
yeah,
easiest
that's a
compromise.
more that's a more there are personal reasons for that which I won't get into, but that I take a harder line on that, let's say. But yeah, for the political thing, until I'm in that situation, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I will. We can stop that train of thought for now.
All right. Well, we're not making much progress. We're almost an hour in, and we haven't even finished with Article 10. So,
Well, it's your topic, so I get to wash my hands of the responsibility for timing and
well,
for
that's
organization. I just get to be the annoying gnat who
that's that's convenience.
derails.
That's
Yeah,
convenient. You're the gadfly. All right,
exactly.
10.
Is that you or me?
You.
Okay. If someone is accused of breaking the law, they have the right to a fair and public trial.
All right, this is still the legal
Yeah, it fits nicely
legal
with our
situation. 6, 7, 8,
little
9, 10
aside
are
there.
really all about uh, legality. And actually, Article 11, too, which is pretty long. Part 1 says everyone charged with a penal offense has the right to be presumed innocent until proved guilty, it says, according to law in a public trial at which he, oh my God, these pronouns, has had all the guarantees necessary for his defense, excuse me. 2. No one shall be held guilty of any penal offense on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a penal offense under national or international law at the time when it was committed, nor shall a heavier penalty be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time the penal offense was committed. I thought this was interesting because it's like there's a grandfather clause, right? Like if it
Mm,
was not illegal at the time but was made illegal later, you can't be tried
right,
ex post facto.
right. Yeah, I noted that as well.
Keep going. 12.
Okay, 12. Nobody should try to harm our good name. Nobody has the right to come into our home, open our letters, or bother us or our family without a very good reason. The without a very good reason seems a bit vague, but
Yeah. Let's see what the original says. No mention of very good reason.
yeah.
But I like the phrase attacks upon his honor and reputation. Like that's related to this Taiwanese law of defamation. I'm guessing maybe Mr. or Dr. Chong included that. The issue of honor and reputation being important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think immediately about like certain Asian cultural aspects related to shame and face.
Right. Article 13, Part 1. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. 2. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And I'll read the other interpretation, which says we all have the right to go where we want to in our own country and to travel abroad as we wish. That would make a mockery of all the entangled visa laws that we have.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that's just a cause of injustice or a source of injustice that I experience intimately with my wife. But as a traveler, I see that that discrepancy between my passport and other passports like so vividly, and it's really kind of shocking and crazy how much that defines your kind of world experience, where you can go, and it's just such a blatant example of a caste system in the world, you know?
Yeah. Well, definitely. But I mean, the principle I support.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just weird, right? Because these are like UN, we have all the representatives there. But that's not even something that people are covert or apologetic about, like their immigration laws, you know, or even for travel, right? People will happily say, right? It's not something they're trying to hide. Like a lot of stuff will just be trying to like be manipulated to say that, oh yeah, we do uphold this. It's just, and if you know, but there's no, like, this is, if you're from this country, you can come. If you're not, you know, and that's all very matter of fact.
Well, they would probably say, oh, you do have the right, but you must comply with certain procedures. Of course, they don't say that. They don't say that. There's no like extenuating circumstances mentioned in the language here.
And especially just that this country has this category, this country has this category, right? And
yeah.
Well,
it's a caste system of nations, as you said. I think that's a good description. All right, 14. That's you.
If we are frightened of being badly treated in our own country, we all have the right to run away to another country to be safe.
And part 2 of the original says, this right may not be invoked in the case of prosecutions genuinely arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. That's their escape clause, you see. You know, who defines what's a non-political crime?
Right. Do you think I should go to the original instead of doing these alternative versions, or is it maybe interesting to contrast the two?
We're already an hour in, and I'm getting tired. I'm thinking of quitting at the halfway point. Article 15.
Oh my God.
1. Everyone has the right to a nationality. 2. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. That's another tricky one. How easy is it to do that? To change nationality, you know?
Right.
It's not like you can snap your fingers.
I'm starting to wonder, like, why Amnesty has chosen to translate these the way they have. Like, for this one, all they've written is, we all have the right to belong to a country. But what's so great about belonging to a country that you don't particularly appreciate?
Well, I think they're saying you have the right not to be a stateless person, you know, with no passport and no paperwork justifying you as being part of some internationally recognized community.
Right. But especially that last part of Article 15, where it says, nor denied the right to change his nationality. Like, Amnesty has completely skipped that in this simplification version. So, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't say anything about it. So that's where I'm going to cut off reading these simplified versions. But you may be cutting us off anyway, so.
Well, what do you want to do? You want to continue with the challenge and read the other 15?
I'm easy. Listeners may not appreciate that for me it's 6:51 p.m., whereas for you it's 11:51, right?
Yeah, almost midnight.
Yeah, and I'm wired on caffeine.
Oh, you are. Well,
Yeah, I had one extra coffee today.
let's just skim them. I've got certain uh, phrases highlighted, so maybe we just talk about those.
Okay.
In Article 16, there's mention of equal rights as to marriage, which was it's 1948, right? So that was somewhat prophetic, almost as though they envisioned gay marriage.
Well, but they do say men and women.
Men and women. Yeah, but it doesn't
So
say men can't marry men or women can't marry women.
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
It just says they have the right to marry and to found a family.
Right.
Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. How do you define consent? This is interesting, though. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. This just reminds me of Engels, classic work on the family and the origin of the state. I
don't know that. I mean, I know Engels, but I don't
yeah.
know this particular
Well, I
work.
mean, he as he takes as his point of departure the anthropological theories of some British scholar that talks about like hunter gatherer groups and group marriage, and he seems to endorse that system more so than the modern system of the nuclear family with the patriarchal father and the matriarchal mother, and then like how the family is the training ground for the citizen, right? Like just as you obey mommy and daddy, you got to obey the government and the state and so on. So it's just interesting that the family, but it doesn't define family. Maybe a family can include like a polygamous patriarch with multiple wives and all the children, or maybe it means
Right.
extended family.
Yeah.
Article 17 says no one shall be deprived of his property. The
Arbitrarily.
no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property, right? I was thinking of like the phrase in some of those early American documents. I think it was some British document that referred to life, liberty, and property, which was changed to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Less of an emphasis on property, but of course, property was considered by those founding fathers of the U.S. to be
It's
an
John
important
Locke,
part
apparently.
of. Yeah, right. They changed the phrasing, to pursuit of happiness, right? Making it more, I don't know, metaphysical, I guess you could say, or abstract.
Right.
18, nothing really to comment on. 19, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. In other words, textual deviants, everyone has the right to listen to this podcast. There, I said it.
And we have the right to say what we want without being persecuted.
Mm-hmm. But as George Carlin says, if you don't agree with this, then I think you have the right to kill me. 20.
Nice.
No one may be compelled to belong to an association. I thought that was an interesting one. Okay, I don't want to be a citizen of the United States. I don't want to be a foreign national in Taiwan. Does anyone care? I assert that right. What happens? What's the effect of that? You've heard about Most Def, right? Like, uh, he had an international passport. Like, there's some organization that will issue you an international passport, and like he got arrested trying to use it going from one place to another. Had you heard about this?
No. I heard something, but not the detail.
I think it's called an international passport, and I don't remember who issues it, but you can apply for it. Of course, good luck using it to get in and out of certain places. Seems like you're looking it up now. Article 21, equal access to public service. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent free voting procedures. The fetishization of voting and the parliamentary system. This is where maybe, like, some of those relativists have objections.
This is starting to get kind of depressing, by the way.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, just thinking about the disparity again between this and reality. Like when we really hone in on each article, it starts to get a little bit sad.
Well, I mean, speaking of hypocrisy or the disconnect between reality and ideal, it's well understood that U.S. elections are among the most corrupt and, the least free and fair in the world. So you've got like the loudest scolder of other nations, for not following these precepts, being one of the most egregious violators of these very precepts. Yeah. All right, Article 22, the right to social security. Again, that's like the language of the Roosevelt platform inserted into this document. Eleanor was perhaps insisting that some of her husband's policies would be encoded in this. I did like this though. Everyone has the right to the free development of his personality. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, very nice.
I like that phrasing, right? Like we all
self-realization.
Yeah, it's like the Jungian individuation. We all have the right to that. I'm in favor of it.
We all have the right to therapy.
Yes. 23. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. Oh, how far we are from realizing that. The right to equal pay for equal work. The right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. The right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. Just think about like all the crackdowns on the Amazon union and other attempts to organize, right, in the U.S.
Well, yeah. And on the other side of geopolitics, we could maybe take this moment to remind the listener that this document was not universally approved of. And in fact, 8 countries abstained, including most notably the Soviet Union. So I'm just thinking when we talk about labor, I think maybe for them the idea of the right to a union would be kind of absurd, because like it's like the party itself like is the union.
In theory,
So
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean obviously I don't agree that was the case, but they may have had objections with that type of language because
Right. All
Anyway,
right, 24, the right to rest and leisure. Oh, I love this one, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Amen. I think my favorite article is Article 24. Let me repeat it. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Fuck yeah. I hereby ratify Article 24. I love it.
agreed. If you talk about the ones we enjoy, I like 27, but I'll let you get
Oh,
there.
we'll get to that. Have you ever read Bertrand Russell's, I think it's called In Praise of Idleness? That's a very enjoyable
No, but
read.
I've listened to Morrissey's Spent the Day in Bed.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Which is
right.
One of my favorite songs, actually.
Well, it's a similar idea put forth in Bertrand Russell's book. He basically argues for a 4-hour workday. There's no reason why anyone should work more than 4 hours a day. It's absolutely unnecessary.
Or in the words of Morrissey, life ends in death. Let me get the rest of the line just because I love this line. I love this song, by the way. It's just the best song. We should do an episode on it. Life ends in death, so there's nothing wrong with being good to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Doesn't he say something like, I'm not my type, but
I love my bed. And he also says, I spent the day in bed as the workers stay enslaved.
Right. In praise of idleness.
And I also love this line, where all my dreams are perfectly legal, in bed.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like
great.
We're already doing an episode on this song.
Yeah.
We're really highlighting the intertextuality this time. Yeah, it also reminds me of Faulkner, who said something like, the only thing you can do 8 hours a day is work. That's why man is miserable, right? You can't eat, you can't drink, you can't make love all day. The only thing you can do is work, and that's why man makes himself and everyone else miserable. Something like that.
I like working, though, I will say.
Well, depends on what the job is, I guess.
For sure. 100%.
Article 25. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family. And then part 2 of that, motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. God stand up for bastards. As Edmund,
did you see my message in the chat?
As Edmund said in Lear. No. What?
I said I have to pee.
Oh, you did? You sent me a message?
In the Riverside chat.
Oh. Well, can you make it through the next 5?
Yeah, so it depends how much longer we want to go. We either pause it or we
let's finish it, and if you wet yourself, so be it.
Okay, I have the right to pee.
You have that's true.
And I have the right to pee in a toilet.
Yeah. Yes, you do. So do you want to exercise that right now, or you want to do you have
an easy pause function? I feel like there should be a pause button.
It'll cut it off.
Then let's just keep going. We'll soldier through.
All right.
All right.
I don't want to be responsible for your bladder burst, though.
No, I'm okay.
All right, 26. Elementary education shall be compulsory. This is one where I said, wait a minute, what? So no homeschooling? This seems like,
Well, that doesn't mean no homeschooling. That means like you need to be educated as an elementary,
but
at elementary age.
Compulsory. I'm reminded of Lawrence, who says, education, which of the various me's do you propose to educate and which do you propose to suppress? You're going to make it compulsory? I don't know about that.
I didn't catch that quote. Do you want to repeat it? I didn't fully understand.
Education shall be compulsory.
No. I mean, can you repeat the Lawrence quote?
Oh, well.
This is D.H. Lawrence, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I'm quoting from memory, but he said something like, education, right. Which of the various me's do you propose to educate and which do you propose to suppress? I think he's
so what's his point about identity?
Yeah, I think he's using the term. I mean, he's using the word education in the etymological sense, like leading out,
leading out of ignorance,
drawing out. No, it's like if the individual is a multitude of identities or me's, right? You educate some, you lead some of them out, but the others you allow to languish or you actively suppress them. You can't educate all of the various me's. So certain me's are going to be prioritized, which means others will be ignored or, as I say, actively suppressed. I mean, think about it, like in the educational system, especially in the public school system, you're training them to. There's a sort of behavioral component which is undeniable. It's a socialization process. As teachers, we may focus on creativity and critical thinking. Those are my two goals, but
socialization is very important. I mean, I say as an educator.
Well,
and teaching manners and politeness, I think that's critical.
Well, I would prefer to de-emphasize those, but
I wouldn't, because you can't have a civilized conversation where you exercise critical thinking.
Well, if people I understand. I mean, you don't have to convince me.
They go together, is my point. They go together.
Well, yeah. Well, you don't have to convince me. I know that's an important part of classroom management, but it's my least favorite. It's tiresome, It's like I didn't sign up to be a cop. But
no,
of course.
But you are less of a cop if you've established that decorum.
I understand, but it's a constant struggle with a certain category of learners.
I thought you were going to say with a certain, and then give me a Taiwanese name of this one bastard that you teach.
No, I could give several, but okay. It says as part. This is a 26.
Can I ask you randomly? Can you give me a?
I don't think you really have to
Taiwan...
pee.
I do have to pee.
All right.
Can you give me a Taiwanese name?
They all have English.
Don't pick
names.
An actual student.
They all have English names.
Okay, well, don't give me the English name. Give me a Taiwanese male name.
A male name? I mean,
a full name, first and surname.
I'll have to get back to you on that. We don't refer to our students by their Chinese names.
No. Yeah, but you know a name of a Taiwanese male, no?
Mao Zedong.
Okay, so they're Chinese names, basically.
Yeah. Oh, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, surname first and then a 2-syllable, individual name.
And Okay, so again, I was just thinking about like Korean names. I mean, I teach quite a few Koreans now, you know. So
Hmm.
I was just thinking I'm sure we've talked about like the how there's like essentially seven different surnames,
Yeah,
you know, or something like that, right? So is it something like that
it's
in?
similar. I mean, a lot of the Korean names are Chinese names or translations thereof.
Okay, but is it also like where there's this kind of a limited number of surnames?
Yes.
Okay, and then it's a three. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I think Korean naming, the Korean naming system is basically, derived from the Chinese naming system, even to the point of borrowing actual family names, surnames, like E in
So
Korean
every
is
one of your
Lee.
students in every age group that you've taught, it's always been a Western name that the kids use.
Yes. It's just
Is that
they're
what is the
assigned,
reason for
I
that?
don't know, man.
Is that because they think you can't handle,
It's, it's,
or is it because they want it,
well, that's part of the way
or
they
both?
do English education here. That's maybe why one reason why they're more successful than Korea. Like they really try to create an exclusively English environment.
Mm.
But
Okay.
anyway, Article 26. This is a three-part article. Part 3 says parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. So maybe that allows for the homeschooling. All right, Article 27, your favorite. Go.
Everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its
I love
benefits.
that one too.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You said that's your favorite, right?
Well, I just like the arts getting a shout out,
Yeah.
and the necessity of arts in our mental welfare.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then part 2 of that says everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he is the author. Hmm. Interesting, right? Like it's copyright protection
Mm-hmm.
or patent protection for the scientist. All right, 28. Everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. Self explanatory, self referential. Article 29. Everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. I thought that was interesting. It's like the free development, free and full development of the individual, which was alluded to earlier, is only possible within the context of a society. There's no individual outside of society, it seems to suggest.
I'm fading now, and also the urinary glands are
Expanding.
growing more intense.
These rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. And Article 30 is a kind of disclaimer. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein. Again, nice in
Or,
theory.
as the simplified version says, nobody can take away these rights and freedoms from us.
I like that version better.
Yeah.
All right, so we rushed the second half of it, but we basically completed the Roger Waters challenge. Any final thoughts?
I think it's an admirable document, and in a way, it's very healthy if an awareness of it has some place in the public consciousness. because like if students know about this, and then yeah, there's at least a chance of, as you said, of shaming people in power, and even if fairly superficially, being able to refer to and maintain some kind of standard, whatever, however abstract or idealistic it may be.
I like that.
And you?
No, I like that. And I don't have anything to add to it. So before you go pee, do you want to preview the next text, or
Yeah,
are you still
I
thinking about it?
fantasized about a variety of topics. And actually, if it was strictly my choice, and if I wasn't honoring our faithful listeners' requests, I was gonna pick Korean food, and we were gonna do an episode where we just look at different menus and go through the items and talk about how tasty they are. But we can save that for a future episode.
That'll be fun.
Because I do want to. Yeah, totally. We'll just take a gimbap Cheongguk menu and be like, "Well, what about this?"
Mm-hmm.
But no, our next episode will be fun regardless. And it was the first request from my partner Liliana Muhammad Zianova, and it's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I'm indoctrinating her with at the moment. So we haven't picked the exact episode yet. When we do, we'll let listeners know in case they want to watch it prior to listening.
Oh, I thought you had.
We have, but I want to just exercise the right to potentially like revisit and make sure it's a good one, or make sure it's an absolutely legendary one. But I think that the character that Larry David plays, or allegedly isn't playing, if it's actually him, is pretty fascinating as someone that on the one hand like inspires our envy, and a lot of people are like, Larry was right in this clip or whatever, like he's the arbiter of justice, and at the same time he is a dick.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that tension is really interesting and is one that we can explore.
I look forward to that.
And can you double preview the following episode? Because I think that's worth a quick mention.
Well, I'm leaving for the Philippines tomorrow, just a short trip, 2 days, weekend getaway, and just as when you went to London and we traded voice notes, voice messages, I think we'll do something similar for this trip.
Yeah, so I'm excited to experience the Philippines secondhand.
Well, it'll be my first time there, so should be interesting. All right, go pee.
Do you speak any Tagalog? Is that the language?
Only obscenities. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Until next time. Bye-bye.